Welcome back, everyone, to a new story. We really hope you enjoy it. If you could be anyone, who would you choose to be? The woman on the holographic billboard asked the question with a serene smile, her voice echoing softly in the sterile silence of my apartment. Her image flickered against the perpetual twilight of the city outside my window, a city of neon canyons and anonymous lives. My life. My name was Caleb, and I was a ghost, not in the literal sense. Of course, I had a job in a cubicle farm downtown, a social security number, and a recurring order for pad thai from the place on the corner. But I felt invisible. I moved through the world like a whisper, my presence barely registering on those around me. I'd go to work, nod at my colleagues, eat lunch alone at my desk, and take the train home in a silence that was becoming more of a weight than a comfort. That night, the loneliness felt particularly sharp. It was a Tuesday, which meant nothing. Every day was a flat line, a gray hum of existence. I was scrolling through my feed, the blue light of the screen painting my face in a cold, artificial glow, when I saw it, an ad, sleek and minimalist, Hope Clinic, Rebuild Yourself. Beneath the text was a simple, inviting button, Learn More. The tagline pulsed gently, not surgery, not an illusion, a true transformation. It sounded like nonsense. Of course, the kind of new age snake oil that preys on people like me, the quiet, the desperate, the ones who dream of being someone else. But something about the woman's question from the billboard still lingered in my mind. If you could be anyone, I'd tried. I really had. A few weeks ago, in a fit of desperate optimism, I'd gone to the drugstore and bought a box of blonde hair dye. I spent an hour in my cramped bathroom, the chemical smell stinging my nostrils, and emerged looking like myself, but with badly dyed yellow hair. No one at work said a word. The next week, I bought a bright, patterned shirt, a stark contrast to my usual uniform of gray and navy. Again, nothing. It was as if I was rendered in a shade only I could see. I walked to the bathroom mirror and stared at my reflection. A man in his late 20s looked back, unremarkable in every way, brown hair growing out from the blonde disaster. Tired eyes, a face that was neither handsome nor ugly. It was a face built for crowds, designed to be overlooked. If you look like someone else, I whispered to the man in the glass, would you feel any different? Would you be happier? The reflection offered no answers. The silence in my apartment pressed in. My finger hovered over the ad on my screen. The woman from the billboard, Dr. Aris Thorne her name was, smiled out from the clinic's homepage. Her eyes seemed to hold a deep, knowing calm. My loneliness was a physical ache, a hollow space in my chest. The desire to be seen, to be real, was a thirst I could no longer ignore. With a deep breath that felt like a plunge into icy water, I clicked the button. I booked a consultation. The flicker of hope, however irrational, was the first thing I had felt in a very long time. It was a terrifying, exhilarating spark in the suffocating darkness of my life. The Hope Clinic wasn't what I expected. There were no hushed, sterile hallways or the antiseptic smell of a hospital. The waiting room was minimalist and warm, with soft lighting and comfortable chairs arranged in a way that felt private. I sat among a handful of other people, all of whom looked perfectly ordinary. A woman absently scrolled on her tablet. A man nervously tapped his foot. We were a quiet collection of souls waiting for something, Caleb. The voice was gentle but clear, cutting through my anxious thoughts. I looked up and saw her, Dr. Aris Thorne. She was exactly as she appeared in the ads, older, with a short, elegant sweep of silver hair and eyes that seemed to see right through the carefully constructed walls I'd built around myself. She wasn't smiling like she did on the billboard. Her expression was one of calm, professional empathy. Right this way, she said, leading me down a short hall into a comfortable office. One wall was a seamless screen displaying a tranquil, shifting pattern of light. I sat in a chair opposite her desk. My hands were clammy. You don't have to be Caleb, she began, her voice low and even. If you don't want to be. I managed a weak, skeptical laugh. That's a hell of an opening line. Is this where you sell me on a new life coaching package, extreme makeover, Dr. Thorne didn't react to my sarcasm. She simply folded her hands on her desk and met my gaze. What we offer here is called bioreformation. It is a total genetic conversion. It is not cosmetic. It is not reversible. The room suddenly felt cold. Genetic conversion, what are you talking about? That's science fiction. It was, she corrected softly. But the future has a way of arriving sooner than we expect. The process doesn't just alter your appearance, your facial structure, your height, your build. It rewrites you at a cellular level, your biology, your hormonal balance. We can even alter the very core of your physical sex. I stared at her, speechless. My mind reeled. This was insane, a scam, and yet, the way she spoke with such quiet, unshakable conviction was profoundly unsettling. So you're telling me, I said slowly, trying to wrap my head around it, that I could walk in here as me and walk out as someone completely different, a woman, even if that is who you choose to be, she confirmed, her expression unreadable. We don't create someone new from scratch. Caleb, think of it more as unlocking a potential that was already there, dormant in your genetic code. We help you become the person you were always meant to be, the one you never dared to imagine. She swiped her hand across her desk, and the large screen on the wall came to life. It displayed a series of profiles. Each had a before and after hologram that rotated slowly. A shy, overweight man with thinning hair became a handsome, confident man with a chiseled jaw. A woman with tired, sad eyes became a vibrant artist with a bright, infectious smile. And then one stopped me. The before was a man who looked achingly familiar, not in his features, but in the profound loneliness in his eyes. He looked just as invisible as I felt. The after was a woman. She was beautiful, but it wasn't just that. Her posture, the light in her eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, it all radiated a sense of peace, of rightness, of joy. They look happy, I whispered, the words catching in my throat. They are themselves, Dr. Thorne corrected. For the first time, the process is absolute. Your old DNA would be gone. Your past identity, legally and biologically, would cease to exist. You would be reborn, in a very real sense. It's a monumental decision. It is, in effect, a death and a birth all at once. The fear that had been prickling at the edge of my consciousness bloomed into a cold dread. This was terrifying. It was the stuff of nightmares, of cautionary tales. But as I looked at the woman on the screen, at the genuine peace in her face, a different feeling began to surface. It was a tiny, fragile seed of curiosity. A dangerous, thrilling question began to form in the deepest, most hidden part of my mind. What if? The days following my consultation were a sleepless haze. Dr. Thorne's words echoed in my head on a loop, a death and a birth all at once. I went to work, sat in my cubicle, and stared at spreadsheets. But the numbers and letters blurred into meaningless squiggles. The world around me, once just gray and muted, now felt like a cage. I started a journal, a cheap spiral notebook I bought on my lunch break. I didn't know what to write at first, but then it started to pour out of me decades of unspoken feelings, of quiet discomforts I'd never had the words for. I wrote about how I always felt like I was performing, playing a role I hadn't auditioned for, the expectations of being a man, the stoicism, the assertiveness, the casual confidence felt like a costume I wore every day, and it was heavy. I wrote about the strange, fleeting moments of envy I'd feel seeing women laughing with their friends, the easy way they expressed emotion, the beauty and variety in the clothes they wore. It wasn't a sexual feeling, it was a deeper, more profound sense of longing, a longing to be. The more I wrote, the clearer it became. The problem wasn't my boring job or my shabby apartment. The problem wasn't that I was invisible. The problem was that I was invisible to myself. I had spent my entire life trying to be a man named Caleb, and I had never once felt at home in my own skin. A week after my first visit, I called the Hope Clinic. My voice was shaking. I want to do it, I said, the words feeling both insane and incredibly sane at the same time. The process moved quickly after that. There were more consultations, physical exams, and psychological evaluations. And then came the day I had to sign the contract. It was a thick document, full of legal jargon. But the core of it was simple: Caleb would cease to exist. I was signing my own death warrant and, I hoped, my own birth certificate. I sat in a small, quiet room, a sterile white gown clinging uncomfortably to my body. Across from me was a full-length mirror. I stared at my reflection for a long, long time, trying to memorize the face I was about to lose forever, the tired eyes, the tense jaw, the faint lines of a life lived in quiet desperation. Goodbye. Caleb, I whispered. There were no tears, just a strange, hollow sense of finality. Dr. Thorne entered the room, her presence as calming as ever. She stood beside me, looking at my reflection in the mirror. When you wake up, she said softly, remember this. You chose this. You are not a victim of circumstance. You are the architect of your own soul. They led me to the procedure room. It was circular and white, with a comfortable-looking bed in the center under a complex array of soft, glowing lights. As I lay down, a medical technician placed a mask over my face. Count back from 10. A gentle voice said. I took a deep breath, the cool gas filling my lungs. The lights above me began to soften and blur, melting into a warm, liquid glow. My body felt heavy, then weightless, as if I were dissolving into the light itself. My consciousness frayed at the edges. 10, 9, the sensation of my body, the very feeling of being Caleb, began to fade. 8, and in the deepest part of my fading mind, a place beyond thought or reason, I heard a single clear whisper. It didn't feel like it came from outside, but from within, a sound that had been waiting my whole life to be heard. Hope. My first sensation was confusion. I was floating in a warm, comfortable void, the remnants of a dream slipping through my fingers. The dream was about a man named Caleb, a sad, lonely man. I felt a pang of pity for him. Then came awareness. My head was heavy on the pillow, a dull throb behind my eyes, but everything else felt wrong, or rather, it felt different. The sheets against my skin felt impossibly soft. When I shifted my legs, there was a strange lack of weight, a new center of gravity. I took a breath, and my chest felt lighter, smaller. My eyes fluttered open. The room was bathed in a soft, dawn-like light. Dr. Thorne was sitting in a chair nearby, watching me with that same placid expression. Welcome back, she said. Her voice was the first anchor in a sea of new sensations. I tried to answer, to ask where I was, but the sound that came out of my mouth was not my own. It was a soft, slightly hoarse murmur, a pitch higher than I could have ever consciously produced. The vibration of it in my throat was utterly alien. This can't be me, I croaked, and the words themselves felt strange on my tongue. Dr. Thorne smiled, a genuine, warm smile this time. The man you were is gone. He chose this for you. She gestured to a small remote on my bedside table. When you're ready. My hand trembled as I reached for it. It felt smaller, more delicate. The skin was smooth, the nails neatly shaped. I pressed the button. Across the room, a wall panel slid away to reveal a full-length mirror, and the lighting in the room brightened to a clear, morning glow, and I saw her. The person in the mirror was a stranger. She was young, perhaps in her mid-20s, with a heart-shaped face and large, questioning eyes that were, impossibly, my own. They held the same history, the same hint of old sadness, but they were set in a completely new landscape. Her hair was a soft brown, falling in gentle waves to her shoulders. It brushed against my neck, and I felt the phantom sensation in the reflection. I was her, she was me. I slowly sat up, the hospital gown shifted, and I caught a glimpse of a body that was not mine. Slender shoulders, a gentle curve at the hip. My breath hitched. Welcome back, Hope, Dr. Thorne said gently. Hope, the name from the dream, my name. Tears began to well in my eyes, hot and sudden. I raised a hand to my face, and the sensation of soft skin, of a different bone structure beneath, was staggering. My fingers traced the line of my jaw, my cheekbones, my lips. It was real. The tears weren't for Caleb. I wasn't mourning him. I was crying from a tidal wave of emotions I couldn't even name. Shock, fear, disbelief. But underneath it all, a current of something else, a profound, terrifying, an utterly bizarre sense of rightness. It felt like I had spent my entire life wearing shoes that were 2 sizes too small, and I had only just now taken them off. Dr. Thorne stood and came to my bedside. It will take time to adjust, physically and emotionally. Be patient with yourself. She helped me stand. My legs felt unsteady, my balance completely off. The world seemed tilted on a new axis. I took a hesitant step toward the mirror, my movements graceless and uncertain. The woman in the mirror mimicked me, her expression a mixture of awe and terror. I opened my mouth and spoke my new name aloud for the first time. Hope. The voice that answered was light and clear. It was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard, and for the first time in my life, looking at my reflection, I didn't want to turn away. I wanted to know the person staring back at me. The next few weeks were spent inside the clinic, in what they called the social reintegration program. It sounded clinical, but it was really a gentle, guided introduction to myself. Dr. Thorne explained that my new body had a different hormonal balance, a different muscular structure. My brain had to relearn everything. My first lesson was simply how to walk. My new center of gravity, located lower in my hips, made me feel clumsy and off balance. A kind physical therapist guided me, teaching me to let my hips sway naturally, to take smaller, more fluid steps. It felt performative at first, like I was imitating a woman, but slowly. It started to feel less like an act and more like an instinct. Then came the clothes. One day, a stylist brought a rolling rack into my room. It was filled with everything. Jeans, blouses, sweaters, dresses. She laid out a set of items on the bed for my first lesson. "We'll start with the basics," she said, her smile warm and non-judgmental. The basics were a pair of simple black panties and a soft, non-underwire bra. I held them in my hands, the delicate fabric feeling utterly foreign. I had never touched lingerie with anything other than a kind of detached curiosity. Now, I was supposed to wear it. In the privacy of the bathroom, I undressed. My new body was still a source of constant surprise. I'd catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror and be startled all over again by the soft curves, the smooth skin. With fumbling, clumsy fingers, I put on the bra. The straps felt strange against my shoulders, the band a slight pressure around my ribs. It wasn't uncomfortable, just present. Then the panties. The silk felt cool and light against my skin. I looked in the mirror. It was just underwear, but it felt like a profound statement. It was a secret I was wearing, a confirmation of the new reality under my clothes. The stylist helped me pick out an outfit: a pair of dark wash skinny jeans, a simple white t-shirt, and a soft gray cardigan. The jeans were the biggest shock. They hugged my legs and hips in a way I'd never experienced. When I walked, the fabric moved with me, a constant reminder of the new shape of my body. It was both restrictive and strangely affirming. The ultimate challenge was shoes. She presented me with a pair of low, block-heeled ankle boots. "Just for posture," she said. The moment I stood up in them, I nearly fell over. They forced me onto the balls of my feet, tilting my entire body forward and forcing my back to arch slightly. It felt precarious and unnatural. I took a few wobbly steps, clinging to the wall for support, and then I stumbled, collapsing onto the soft carpet in a heap. I looked up at the stylist, expecting to see pity, but she was just laughing gently. "Everyone does that," she assured me. "Try again." And I did, over and over. Each step was a small victory. Makeup was the final frontier. A makeup artist sat me down in front of a lighted mirror. My hands shook as I tried to hold an eyeliner pencil. The first time, I smudged a thick black line across my eyelid. The second time, I poked myself in the eye. But on the third try, I managed a thin, wavering line. She showed me how to apply a touch of mascara, a hint of blush. Then she handed me a tube of lipstick. It was a soft, rosy pink. I carefully painted it onto my new lips, my heart pounding with a strange mixture of shame and excitement. When I was done, I stared at my reflection. It was still me, but the makeup didn't hide me. It highlighted me. My eyes looked brighter, my cheeks had a healthy glow, and my lips looked soft and full. For the first time, a flicker of something new appeared in my expression: confidence. A genuine, unforced smile spread across my face. The woman in the mirror smiled back, her eyes sparkling. In those moments, the awkwardness and fear would melt away. The feeling of wearing a dress and feeling the fabric swish against my bare legs. The sound my heels made clicking on the floor. The sight of my own painted nails as I typed on a keyboard, each new experience was a thread, weaving me into this new identity. It wasn't a costume anymore. It was just me, Hope, and she was slowly, tentatively, starting to feel at home. The day I left the clinic was bright and sunny. Dr. Thorne walked me to the door. I was wearing a simple blue sundress and flat sandals, an outfit I had chosen myself. Every part of me was thrumming with a terrifying and exhilarating energy. "The world is waiting, Hope," she said, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. "Be kind to yourself." I stepped outside. The sunlight hit my bare arms and legs, and the sensation was so new, so immediate, that I gasped as Caleb. I had moved through the world under a veil of anonymity. The sun was just light, the wind was just air, but now my senses felt heightened. I was aware of the breeze lifting the hem of my dress, the warmth of the pavement through my thin-soled shoes, and most of all, the looks. People looked at me, not with suspicion or judgment, just looks. A man walking his dog gave me a polite, fleeting smile. A group of women chatting at a cafe glanced up as I passed. I was no longer invisible. I was a woman moving through the world, and that made me visible. Part of me wanted to shrink away, to pull my old gray cloak of anonymity back around me. But another, braver part of me lifted my chin a little higher and kept walking. The feeling was a cocktail of pure terror and pure joy. My first real test was meeting Chloe. She was my only real friend from my old life, a sarcastic, warm-hearted graphic designer I'd known since college. I had texted her from a new number, asking to meet at a coffee shop and telling her I had something important, something impossible to tell her. I saw her sitting at a table by the window, her fiery red hair a beacon. My heart hammered against my ribs. I took a deep breath and walked in. I stood by her table for a full 30 seconds before she finally looked up from her phone, an annoyed expression on her face. "Can I help you?" she asked, her eyes skimming over me with polite disinterest. My throat was dry. "Chloe," I said, and her head snapped up, her eyes widened, her jaw slackened. She stared at me, her brain working furiously to connect the familiar voice with the utterly unfamiliar face. She looked from my eyes to my mouth and back again. "No," she whispered, her voice full of disbelief. "No, it can't be." "Caleb," I just nodded, tears pricking my eyes. For a moment, she was silent. I braced myself for anything disgust, anger, laughter. Instead, she stood up, walked around the table, and pulled me into a fierce, tight hug. She buried her face in my shoulder, and I could feel her shaking. "You idiot," she murmured into my dress. "You absolute crazy idiot." She pulled back, her hands on my arms, her eyes scanning my face, now wet with her own tears. "Your eyes, they're still yours, but you're happy. I've never seen you look this happy." "I am," I said, and the simple truth of the words made me sob. Chloe's acceptance was the permission I needed to believe in myself. With her help, I started building a new life. I found a new apartment, and she helped me decorate it. I also needed a job. I applied for a position as an administrative assistant at a small tech firm. The interview was one of the most nerve-wracking experiences of my life. I wore a simple black pencil skirt, a cream-colored silk blouse, and low heels. Every moment, I was terrified they would somehow see through me, that they would see the ghost of Caleb sitting in the chair, but they didn't. They saw a competent, if slightly nervous, young woman named Hope, and they hired me. Work was a new landscape of subtle social interactions. My male colleagues held doors for me. My female colleagues invited me to lunch and complimented my clothes. It was all new, all uncharted territory. And then there was Ethan. He was a programmer who worked on my floor, with kind eyes and a quiet, gentle demeanor. He didn't just hold the door. He'd wait and walk with me. He'd make a point of stopping by my desk to ask about my day. He'd bring me coffee when he got one for himself. They were small gestures, but they were directed at me. At Hope, one afternoon, he found me in the break room. "Hey," he said, his smile a little shy. "I was just wondering, if you're not busy this weekend, maybe you'd want to get dinner." My heart did a complicated little flip-flop in my chest. As Caleb, a woman showing interest was a fantasy. Now this kind, handsome man was asking me out. It was exhilarating. And it was terrifying. He was asking out Hope, the woman he saw before him. He knew nothing of the man I used to be. A familiar question crept back into my mind, a cold whisper of doubt. Am I still Caleb, or am I finally just Hope? The new life I was building felt beautiful and fragile, like a house of cards. Ethan and I had been on a few dates, each one a sweet, tentative exploration. He was kind and funny, and when he looked at me, he saw hope. But I knew my house was built on a hidden foundation, a past I couldn't keep locked away forever. I had to tell my parents. I drove 2 hours to their suburban home, the same house I grew up in. Every mile brought a fresh wave of nausea. I'd rehearsed the words 100 times, but they all felt flimsy and inadequate. How do you tell the people who raised you as their son that their son is gone? Replaced by a daughter they've never met, I parked in the driveway and sat in the car for a long time. I dressed carefully, choosing a pair of simple trousers and a soft cashmere sweater, pulling my hair back in a low ponytail. I was trying, foolishly, to look less like a stranger, to bridge the impossible gap between who I was and who they remembered. Finally, I got out and rang the doorbell. My mother opened the door. Her smile of welcome froze on her face, replaced by a look of polite confusion. "I'm sorry. Can I help you, Mom?" I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's me." The recognition dawned in her eyes first, the same way it had with Chloe. But where Chloe's face had shown shock, my mother's filled with a deep, bottomless horror. Her hand flew to her mouth. "David," she called over her shoulder, her voice strained. "David, come here." My father appeared behind her. He was a big man, a man who believed in firm handshakes and speaking your mind. He looked at me, then at my mother's stricken face, and his expression hardened into a thundercloud. They let me in. We sat in the living room, the three of us, surrounded by framed photos of a boy and then a young man I no longer was. The silence was thick and suffocating. I tried to explain. I told them about the clinic, about the procedure, about the crushing loneliness of my old life. I told them that Caleb was never really me, just a role I had been forced to play. My mother just wept silently into her hands. My father stared at a spot on the wall just over my head, his jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscles pulsing. When I finished, he finally looked at me. His eyes were cold with a grief so profound it looked like anger. "So you killed him," he said, his voice flat and heavy. "You just decided to kill our son." "No," I pleaded, the tears I'd been holding back finally breaking free. "Dad, I'm still me. I'm right here. I found the real me." "The real you," he scoffed, his voice rising. "The real you is a boy named Caleb. The boy we raised. This is a costume, a sick joke." "David, please." My mother sobbed. He stood up, unable to sit still any longer. He paced the room, running a hand over his head. He wouldn't look at me. It was the ultimate invisibility, worse than any I had ever felt before. To be unseen by your own father. "I don't know who you are," he finally said, his back to me, "but you are not my child. My son is dead." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. I felt a wave of guilt so powerful it almost drowned me. But then, through the pain, something else rose to the surface, a core of certainty. He was wrong. Caleb wasn't dead. He had never truly been alive. I was the one who was alive, for the very first time. I stood up, my body trembling but my voice steady. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Dad. I truly am. But I am not a joke, and this isn't a costume. This is who I am, and her name is Hope." I turned to leave. I was almost at the door when my mother's voice stopped me. "Wait." I turned. She had gotten up and was standing there, her face tear-streaked and pale. She looked from me to my father's rigid back, her heart clearly breaking in two. She took a hesitant step toward me, then another. She reached out and wrapped her arms around me. Her embrace was hesitant at first, then it tightened. "As long as you smile for real." She whispered into my hair, her voice thick with tears. "As long as you are truly happy, I will not turn my back on you. I need time to understand." I hugged her back, clinging to her like a lifeline. It wasn't a complete victory. It wasn't the loving acceptance I had dreamed of. But it was something. It was a start. As I drove away, leaving the ghost of Caleb behind in that house for good, I knew that the path ahead was still fraught with pain. But for the first time, I felt strong enough to walk it. Months passed. Life settled into a new rhythm. My relationship with my mother became a delicate dance of weekly phone calls. We talked about my work, the weather, the plot of a new TV show. We didn't talk about my father. We didn't talk about the past. But she always ended the call by saying, "I love you, Hope." And those words were a quiet, steady healing. My friendship with Chloe was my anchor, a space where I could be completely myself, the nervous, fledgling woman and the person with 30 years of shared memories. We'd laugh about old inside jokes from college, and in the next breath, she'd be giving me advice on how to handle a condescending coworker. With her, my two lives felt integrated, whole. And then there was Ethan. Our relationship had deepened from shy dates into a comfortable, warm intimacy. We'd cook dinner together in my apartment, go for long walks in the park, and talk for hours about everything and nothing. I still hadn't told him about my past. The fear was a constant, low-level hum beneath the surface of my happiness. I was terrified that the truth would shatter the beautiful thing we were building, that he would look at me and see only the ghost of Caleb. One Saturday morning, I was getting ready for a brunch date with him. The sun streamed through my bedroom window, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I stood in front of my full-length mirror, wrapped in a towel, my hair still damp from the shower. I looked at my reflection. For the first time, there was no shock. There was no trace of the stranger I'd seen in the clinic. The face looking back at me was simply, yeah, mine. The eyes were my eyes. The smile that touched my lips was my smile. The soft curve of my hip, the gentle slope of my shoulder, it was my body. There was no more disconnect, no more feeling of being an imposter. The guilt and confusion had faded, replaced by a quiet, unshakable peace. I wasn't the man I used to be, and I wasn't an imitation of a woman. I was just Hope. I smiled at my reflection, a real, genuine smile that reached my eyes. It wasn't because I thought I was particularly beautiful. It was because, for the first time in my entire life, I felt true. I felt real. I am Hope. I whispered to the woman in the mirror, and she understood completely. I was not the person I used to fear I was. I was the person I had always hoped to be. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Ethan. "Can't wait to see you. I'll pick you up in 20. A warm feeling spread through my chest. The fear was still there, a tiny whisper in the back of my mind. I knew I would have to tell him the truth someday, and it would be the hardest conversation of my life. But for now, I wouldn't let it steal my joy. I deserved this. I had fought for this. I got dressed, choosing a bright yellow dress that matched the sunshine outside. I let my hair fall naturally around my shoulders. A touch of mascara, a swipe of pink lipstick, simple, me, as I walked out of my apartment building and into the bustling city street. The world felt different than it had on that first day I left the clinic. The gazes of strangers no longer felt like a threat or a judgment. They were just part of the shared human experience of moving through the world together. I saw Ethan waiting for me at the corner, a warm smile on his face when he saw me. He saw Hope, and for the first time, walking towards him. I wasn't trying to hide. I wasn't trying to perform or fit in. I wasn't running from the ghost of an invisible man. I was just a woman, walking in the sun, living my life for the very first time. And it was more than enough. It was everything.